Happy to introduce today's speaker, Marshall Brown, as he presents on developing your job search strategy. Marshall Brown is a career and executive coach who's passionate about helping people to get clear, get focused, and get ahead in their lives. He's the founder of a global coaching company, Marshall Brown and Associates. And just a reminder, as he's speaking, if you could type your questions into the Q&A box or the chat, and then we can get those questions addressed at the end of his talk. So without further ado, thank you for joining us.
Happy Friday, and delighted to be back with the fellows again. I must have done a good job last year because they invited me back again after speaking with the group last year. So I hope everyone has had a productive day, whether it was your morning or your afternoon, and I'm real excited to be back with you, and nice to meet you, Brittany, who's our moderator. I'm going to ask you, Brittany, if you don't mind, just kind of monitoring the questions, and I'll try and keep on top of it as well. So as Brittany mentioned, I'm a career and executive coach. You don't need to know that much about me. This is not about me. This is about all of you. And I want to, first of all, congratulate you for all the hard work that you have been doing in your fellowship. And it's really, I learned last year from a lot of the fellows, it's really remarkable work that all of you are doing and intend to do in your future. So great work for everybody. Excuse me. And I want to mention, before I get started, a couple things here. One is today's presentation is going to be sort of at 50,000 feet. I'm not going to be able in an hour to go into all the details of specific resume topics and interviewing techniques. I'm going to talk about it in general terms. There are 3 other programs that are planned that are career development related, and I'm sure you'll be receiving, if you haven't already, information about that. One's going to be on interviewing, which will be more in depth than today. Another one that will be on negotiating your job offer. And then a really important one is on networking. So again, those will go into more in-depth conversations than will today. Today is really at 50,000 feet about how to do an effective job search and preparing yourself for one. The other thing I want to mention is I'm a big believer in, unless you put it out in the universe doesn't know what to give you. If you put out negative energy, that's probably what you're going to come back with. So as I was finishing up my presentation last night, having Panda Express Asian food, I got a fortune cookie, right? And my fortune cookie was, I don't know if you can see this or not, but it says, a satisfying career is a worthwhile pursuit. So no matter whether you are thinking about private practice or clinician or whatever, or academia, whatever you choose to do as you move forward, I would encourage you to make it a satisfying career and live your passion. And you'll hear me talk more about that later. But I wanted to share that with you. The universe said that's what I'm supposed to say today to all of you. So there are some words of advice. A satisfying career is a worthwhile pursuit. All right, so I guess I'm supposed to have, let me see. I need to share this. So let me see, share screen. And I'm gonna go here and share. And I'm assuming everybody can see that. Yes?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. So this is where we're going today. Here's our agenda. What I'm going to talk about are the new rules for job search and career success. Some of the things obviously have changed as we have entered and are living through this pandemic, and I'm going to talk a little briefly about that. Ways to stay motivated, because a job search can be demotivating. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to be or attempt to be more motivated. Secrets to an effective job search. What really I have seen and my clients have seen, I would consider to be job search killers. Some networking tips, some interviewing techniques. I'm going to talk a little bit about social media presence, and then we'll take some questions and some comments from folks. So that's where we're headed today. That's a little bit about me. We don't need to cover that. So there's a quick poll that I've asked the fellows to do. And I'm just curious, so I know maybe where to focus a little bit more of my attention today. I'm curious to know, where are you in your job search? So as the poll comes up, if you would just respond to this, I'm just starting to think about it. I really could use some direction. I've started, but not getting very far. I've started and I'm headed in the right direction, and I'm in the interviewing process. So let's kind of see where our audience is today. Okay, so just starting to think about it. Seems to be the main one, and then the other ones are fairly just, okay, that gives me a good sense. Thank you. So we'll end the poll. Results, stop sharing, okay. And we'll move on here then. Gil, can we move on?
Yeah, just close it on your end. It's out.
I did close it on my end. Okay. All right. So perhaps some of you have heard this term already, that we are living even more so than before when this term was first defined right after 9/11. We are living in a VUCA world today. And VUCA stands for volatile, meaning that we are living in a very rapid and unpredictable world today, no matter where you are, by the way, in the world. It's very uncertain. It's unclear. We're not sure really where we might be even in a week or 2 weeks from now. The C is for complex. It's a very chaotic. We're living in a very chaotic, confused world. And we're learning to connect in ways that we have not really connected with in the past. And we're all trying to still figure this out. And then the A is ambiguous. There's a lack of clarity. There's a lack of advancement about where we're going in the future. And this is all causing people to be very anxious. And I'm not trying to paint a very dark picture, but I'm merely telling you about this world that we are living in so that you are prepared for this and that you acknowledge that this has become normal, this VUCA world, that is making people very anxious, that in some ways it's lowering one's motivation, that it's a threat, and it's a lack of clarity about where our careers are going. And you know what? It's taking a lot of energy from us. We don't know what's happening. I mean, look at the atrocities that are happening within the last 10 days in Afghanistan. It's also paralyzing. And I see this with a lot of leaders that I work with and folks in career transition. It's causing people to really paralyze their decision making. So I believe that it's important to be in the space that you acknowledge the kind of world that we are living in right now. And in the good and the good side of that, or the positive part of that, is we've all become more adaptable. We've all become more flexible in many ways. We have hopefully been learning about this new humanity that we might not have experienced before, where we are learning to embrace everyone's uniqueness and diversity that we might not have unfortunately dealt with in the past. We are increasing our digital literacy. So we are becoming more well-versed in various forms of communication. I mean, I've been doing presentations on various topics for over 20 years right now. Never would I have thought that I would be doing this much on Zoom. And I'm sure as a participant, you never thought you would be using Zoom as much as you already have. But we've all had to learn to adapt to these various communication platforms. And never before have I seen project management skills be more important. So I'm going to talk about this later, but I would encourage you to think about your job search as a project. And just as you would manage any other project, having your timelines, your deadlines, you chunking it down, use your same project management skills when it comes to your job search, no matter where you are in the process. I know some of you have started thinking about it. That's great. Some of you might be further along. We know that from the poll. No matter where you are, think about it as project management. And the other thing that's been kind of positive about this whole VUCA world that we're living in is that business travel, and I'm sure you've experienced this. I mean, I know, although I never was able to participate in it three years ago, this is my second year, so 3 years ago when the fellows got together, we unfortunately have not been able to do that, but business travel has been enhanced by, or replaced, I should say, replaced by enhanced technology. So I think this VUCA world has also, although it's been stressful and anxious, has also allowed us to re-examine our priorities and what we are passionate about. And I would suggest that that's a place for you, if you haven't started to uncover what it is that you're really passionate about and what it is that you want to be doing next, that you start uncovering that. Because that's the message you want to put out into the universe. If you're putting out into the universe that you're not clear, you don't necessarily know what it is that you want to be doing, that's what's going to come back to you. Now, I am not saying as a fellow you need to make all of those decisions today, but it's something for you to be thinking about. And to also recognize what your transferable skills are. People aren't necessarily moving up the corporate ladder or whatever industry you are in based on based on a hierarchy. They are moving through via their transferable skills. So you want to make sure that as you progress as a fellow and further along in your career, that you are marketing yourself and you know what your transferable skills are. And if you're not sure what your transferable skills are, now's a good opportunity to start doing that assessment, or those assessments, I should say, and to uncover what your skills are. So that hopefully is a brighter side of this VUCA world that we are all living in. And I want to talk just briefly about some new rules for career success. So one is you have got to take charge of your own career today. And I was saying this years ago, and it's even more relevant today. You cannot wait around for someone to say to you, oh, you should apply for this fellowship or for this residency or for this academic position. You have got to be out there and taking charge of your own career. And I'm going to give you some techniques in a little while about how to do that. But taking charge of your career is even more important in our as we move through this pandemic. Developing your personal brand. You have got to figure out what differentiates you from your competition. And we will talk again a little bit more about that in a little while, but knowing what your personal brand is, what it is that you have to offer that is different from anyone else. And you can sit back and say, oh, well, I don't really, have anything that differentiates myself. I'm sorry, everybody does. Your story is very different from any other fellow that's attending here today. Figure out what your story is, figure out what differentiates you, know what your personal brand is, and show up in a way that's going to exude your personal brand. I mentioned this earlier, and I'm going to say it several times today. You have to have a plan. It can't be just a haphazard way of looking for a job. You've got to have a plan. I also encourage you to have a mentor or a sponsor, and maybe it's a couple mentors and a couple sponsors as you progress through your fellowship and as you move into your career, to have a mentor or a sponsor, somebody who's like your professional partner, someone who you can bounce ideas off of, someone who perhaps is more seasoned than you are, that you can get some ideas from about what your next step should be. And I would also encourage you to take on a leadership role. Yes, it would be great to take it on as a fellow in this program. And if that opportunity doesn't become available, take it on in another organization, another association. Maybe it's in your personal life, you take on some type of leadership role. But that's going to be really important for you as you progress. And the skills that you learn are very important skills to have as you move through your professional development. Okay, so secrets to an effective job search real quickly. Understand what you have to offer to your audience. And this goes back to what are your skills? What am I passionate about? What's my purpose? What's my vision? So understand what it is that you have to offer. Using a well thought out approach to reach your audience in as many ways as possible. We're going to be talking about networking a little bit. Again, having a plan, very logical, a very systematic way to succeed, and using your time wisely. So I've had some of my folks will say to me, well, Marshall, I've sent out 15 resumes last week or Vitas, and I didn't get one hit from any of those. So my question always is, well, what did you do to connect with people? Well, I didn't have the time to do that, is what I hear back. Well, I got to tell you, I would much rather have you spend the time networking and using your time wisely to connect with people, like-minded people, people that are doing the kinds of things that you want to be doing, than writing 15 resumes and cover letters. Studies are showing that there's only about 20 to 25% of jobs today that are getting posted. What does that tell you, folks? People are finding jobs through their network. So I would encourage you, if you only have X amount of time to do your job search because you are involved with everything else that you're doing and trying to have a personal life, right? Spend the majority of that time networking, getting out there and meeting like-minded people, getting out there and getting involved in organizations so that you will meet like-minded people. It's about marketing your value or branding your value, as I said earlier, but this is how people are making effective job changes, no matter what industry they are in. I want to provide you with, since I talked about how people are demotivated, I want to also talk to you about how people are staying motivated today. Having a structure is very important. As I mentioned earlier, it's like a project, right? Your project management skills teach you that it needs to have structure. Same thing here. Having a structure in place that you spend X amount of time on your job search and then you walk away from it, right? And especially now, you know, that can be a real challenge because not only are you involved in other things, but we're all working virtually for the most part. It can be very difficult and be very isolated, but set aside time and have that structure. I have X amount of time that I'm going to send resumes out. I have X amount of time that I'm going to network, and having that structure. Don't let your hobbies and volunteers and your volunteer commitments and everything else that one has to do, right? To take over your schedule. It's very easy to get distracted. Unfortunately, we're really not taught, maybe some of us have some skills, but really not taught how to do an effective job search in high school and college and as we progress. And typically, it's only natural that if it's something that we don't necessarily know about or we're uncomfortable doing, we kind of put it aside, right? And we let other things take its place. And sometimes it's easier to do things that we enjoy doing and to get involved, doing things around the house, right? Set aside time. This is why the structure is very important. I mentioned earlier, having the structure. So, okay, I am not going to do the laundry. I'm not going to take the dog for a walk right now. I'm going to do that later. I'm going to walk the dog later because right now I need to have the time to focus on my job search. Having the daily goals and objectives fits right into that. And if need be, you chunk it down, between, okay, this hour and that hour, this is what I'm going to work on. Some of my clients have a timer that they set that as they're making phone calls, they decide, okay, I'm going to take an hour to make phone calls, and they set their timer. And after that hour, they go on and do something else. Whatever works for you. I would also suggest that you organize your time based on your time clock, right? Like some people, I tend to be, you know, I'm up at 5:30 in the morning, I'm exercising, I'm walking the dog. Well, by 3, 4 o'clock, you can forget it. My energy is really low. So I tend to do things that I know are going to be more of a time commitment, maybe things that are going to be a little bit more difficult for me. I tend to do those things when I have that energy, right? And then sort of the administrative things happen when, you know, I don't have the same energy. So if you know that you're going to, that making some phone calls, meeting some people on Zoom is going to be a real challenge for you, then I would encourage you to do that during a time when you have a lot of energy. And it could be reverse for you. You know, maybe you're more of an afternoon, evening person. That's fine. But know your energy clock and know when your mood swings might be. Again, I mentioned taking on a leadership role, taking on a volunteer role is really important. And it makes us feel good, typically. That's why, you know, you want to, if you're going to do some volunteering, pick something that, you know, you are passionate about, that you would enjoy doing. It's a nice distractor. And obviously it gives back. It looks good on your resume. So I would encourage you to do some volunteering. And you know what? Celebrate every success, as small as you might think it is, but keep yourself motivated and celebrate those successes. If you acknowledge, you know, making that phone call and connecting with somebody about networking is really tough for me, you know what? You do it, and then you go do something fun for yourself, or you you know, give yourself some kind of reward or that extra bowl of ice cream, whatever it might be. But celebrate those successes. Give yourself a reward for accomplishing, whether it be a daily task or a weekly goal that you might have. This is a way to keep yourself motivated, and keep your job search going. I see some folks that, you know, are real energized about it, and then 2 months into it, they haven't gotten a lot of hits from their resume, and they've tried to connect with people, and, you know, oh, well, I really wish I could help you, but I don't know of any jobs, that kind of response. So again, they lose their motivation and they stop with their job search. I would encourage you to keep it going despite all the odds that might come back for you, because it's going to be even more challenging for you to start it up again, because that voice in your head is going to say, oh, you know what? I started this and it didn't work, so why should I do this? No, you want to keep it going, no matter how small the task is. And another challenge that I see with folks is, especially when they get a job offer, or they're in negotiations, I should say, when they're in negotiations for a job offer, they tend to say, okay, so this is really going to happen, and I'm really close to this, so I don't have to bother with my network anymore, and I don't have to follow up on any of these other interviews I would have. Big mistake, folks. Big mistake. I would suggest that until you have that contract or employment offer letter in hand, that you keep your job search going. It should be an ongoing process. So if we had some more time, I would ask the folks, unless you want to put it in the chat, we could always do it that way. What keeps you motivated during your job search? Maybe send out some tips. Feel free to do that, by the way. I should have said in the beginning, feel free to this is not about me, this is about all of you. So if you all have some techniques that are good, whether it be around staying motivated or developing your network as I go through this, feel free to share those tips with your colleagues. Okay, so the process, I pretty much hit upon this. I just want to mention a couple other things. Again, it needs to be very structured, very methodical, to identify opportunities and get your name and expertise in front of the right people. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a little while, but the process is part of knowing who your target audience is. Process is all about knowing your timeline. For some of you, we've identified you haven't started yet. Some of you already have. So knowing whether it's going to be a short-term job search, whether you're close to negotiations, where you are, but knowing what your timeline is, defining your objective. What is it that I want to do? What is it that what are my skills at? What are my transferable skills? What type of industry, what type of hospital setting, what type of academia perhaps you want to be working in. Again, whether it be as a clinician, a private practice, whether it be something that's full-time or part-time. I see more and more people that are doing 2 or 3 part-time positions these days because so much of it obviously can be done remotely. So identifying whether it's something full-time, part-time, maybe it's on a contract position. I would encourage you to start visioning the clearest picture that you possibly can of what your next opportunity looks like. Perhaps some of you have done vision boards in the past. If you haven't, I strongly encourage you to do a vision board. It's all about, again, putting the energy into what it is that you want to be doing. And you might not have all the answers yet. That's okay. That's okay. But start visioning what it is. I used to have people plan their vision board 5 years out. And then, March of 2020, we cut it back to 3 years. Now I'm telling people, you know what? You plan a year out and you're lucky, right? So start thinking about, what does August of 2022 look like? If I was in my ideal position, what would that look like? And you go through magazines and you look online for pictures and words that are meaningful to you, some things that resonate for you, and you put it on a foam board, right? And you have that by your desk. Some people that I've worked with on this have used. I always screw up the name. It's CorkU, I believe. You can do it as a cork board online. It's an app. I have done vision boards for years, and when we were able to travel, I took a picture of mine, and it was my screen on my laptop, so that even though I was like something resonated for me, it's like, is this where I really want to go? I would look at that vision board, and I would think, is this something that's meaningful to me? And maybe something would come along and it wasn't. So I would say, you know what, that wasn't on my vision board, and I'm not sure that's the avenue I want to pursue. So having a clear vision is helpful. And again, it's your vision board. So if you decide in 6 months, you know what, this is not what the vision board that I want, you change it. It's your vision board, but having some vision. Some people don't like vision boards, so they write a story. Okay, if that works better for you, do it, right? Write a story as if it's now August 2022, and you've been in your ideal position. What does that look like? What am I doing? Write it as a story. Just do something. The process is also around, brainstorming, identifying lots of possibilities. Again, this is where your network can help you. Oftentimes we think, especially in this stage of your careers, we think, okay, it has to be either this or this. Look at all the possibilities. Brainstorm with your colleagues, brainstorm with your fellows that are on that are going through this process with you about what you could be doing based on your skills, and do your research about what those possibilities might be. Let's see. In terms of some job search killers, what I wanted to share with you is, and you haven't gotten this yet from me, then you're not with me, but you got to have the structure. And if you don't have the structure, it's not going to work. You've got to have some support through this. It's not something that you can do entirely on your own. And you're very fortunate that you're in a colleague with your other fellows. So rely on the fellows that are in this program with you to brainstorm those ideas and to help you identify what it is that you might have to offer and who is in their network. So A job search killer is definitely one that you try to do on your own. No, bring in other people, whether it be family, friends, significant others, this cohort. But a real job search killer is one that you try to do it on your own. I have never seen anyone do it entirely on their own. So build a support system around you, and one that you can be accountable to, right? Yes, we have to be accountable to ourselves first, no question about it. But it's also helpful when we have someone else to be accountable to. You know, especially with those things I talked about earlier, you know, like I've got to make those 2 calls tomorrow. Okay, so you go to an accountability partner and say, you know, I'm really scared to make these 2 calls, but I'm going to do it. And I'd like to call you, or I'd like to, you know, send you a text after I do those 2 calls, to have that accountability to someone else other than yourself, and then reward yourself. So folks that I see are not doing successful job search are ones that are not accountable to someone else. And I know this is a difficult concept for people to grasp. I mentioned it earlier about branding yourself. Branding is all about marketing yourself. And I would suggest that you start thinking about yourself as a brand, and use the concept of marketing yourself. It will help you as you move through your career, not just when you're doing, you know, your first or second job search, but think about your brand, what it is that is going to separate you from your competition. And every document that you send out, any personal message, any professional message that goes out, anything you put on LinkedIn, any paper that you write should reflect your brand. And if you're sending out one message, but you're speaking another message of what your skills are, that's a job search killer. So that's why it's important, like I said earlier, to know what your skills are, to know what your brand is, so that you are able to market yourself successfully. Okay, I'm going to take a little break here for a second. And Brittany, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do we have any questions that you might want me to address? Otherwise, I'll move forward.
Yeah, are there any questions from anyone in the audience? If not, I had a question.
Okay, all right, I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. You talk a lot about networking, and I'm assuming you might be going into that a little bit more later, but just networking in this current environment, how do you go about it? You know, a lot of times, like, we were networking at in-person conferences, was a really great opportunity to network, and now those don't exist. So what's a good approach to networking in the current environment?
Yeah, it's a great question. Every industry that I work in, and I find this for myself even, you know, I'm an entrepreneur, right? And I've got to be out there networking too. It's a real challenge, no question about it. So to answer your question, do as much social media, have a strong social media presence as you can. Look for opportunities where you can be on calls like this. Obviously, with the Fellows Program, you know, you all are networking with each other. Look for opportunities like this. Look for opportunities for other professional and personal development opportunities where you're going to network with people. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. So you jumped ahead of me a little bit, but I want to be sure I cover it. You know, you never know who is in someone else's, we used to call Rolodexes, right? You never know who has a contact in maybe a clinic or in a hospital or primary care affiliation, I'll say, lack of a better word right now. You never know who's in someone else's network. So sometimes people say to me, well, Marshall, I don't know anyone that works in that industry. Well, you know, who else do you know that might know someone? And those are the folks you want to tap, and not only for you to get to know them, but for them to get to know you. So that's kind of a long story back to, you know, have your strong social media presence. You know, I was telling people to do this early on with LinkedIn. It is even more critical now to make sure you have a strong LinkedIn presence. And what I mean by that is not just like going in and connecting with lots of people and then not ever connecting with them again, or sharing your experiences or finding out what they're struggling with that maybe you can help with them. It's not just about, the count on the LinkedIn of, 1,000 people. It's about developing relationships with those people. That was important before, and it's even more important now because you're absolutely right. We don't have that as much face-to-face. Now, some industries are starting to open up a little bit more. I'm in Southern California, and a lot of places were just actually closed down the last couple of days. I was talking to some people on the East Coast, and things are starting to open up a little bit. There was a big event the other night that, I typically would have been to, but I wasn't going to fly cross country. So things are starting to open up. Be on the lookout for that. And as long as you feel healthy and as long as you feel safe going to those events, then I would encourage you to do that. And another great way to do that in these times is, like I said earlier, about getting involved. Getting involved on a committee. You never know who you're going to meet on that committee. You want to be with like-minded people. So I kind of hope indirectly that answered your question.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, so active and passive job searches. Briefly about this is an active job search is about, well, let's key factors to job success, okay, is having the right attitude. An active job search person you feel very much in control, you feel very confident, you're willing to take up the challenge, and you're open to receiving feedback and suggestions from other people. Versus a passive one is, oh, I am never going to find a job. It's a challenging time, and you take on that victim mode. You tend to blame others. You're inflexible. You're unwilling to try something. You're not following a structured project management process like I suggested. And you're nervous and you're worried. That's a very passive attitude to take. I would encourage you to take the more active job approach. When it comes to another key factor is it's all about staying focused. You seek out external contact and you continue to develop your network, which is very active. You're involved, you're engaged, like we talked about. Your focus is on the job search. You're interested in people, you're interested to find out what they are doing and how you can help them. That's an active focus, whereas a passive focus is more around being very isolated. Your energy is like all over the place. And I know it's hard to do that these days. Trust me, I know, okay? But keeping your energy very focused, is more active, where scattered is a very passive. You're willing to take on any job. That's not exactly the focus I would encourage you to take. Let's see, there's some other focus areas, but I'm going to skip over because of the time here. Let's talk about resilience though. So when it comes to resilience, there's no question about it. It's tough out there, right? I mentioned all that earlier. It's important in an active job search to depersonalize the rejection. And what I mean by that is there's no question you will get rejected. In fact, I even hate that term, to be honest with you, at times, but it's commonly used. You want to have, again, this is where a support group will help, or your cohort of other fellows will help. But it's going to be a challenge out there, and you might face some folks that say, oh, we were down to 2 when we selected the other candidate. Okay, you know what? It's going to happen. You can't personalize that as much as that's where you want to go. That's where our minds typically will go is, oh, they rejected me. I'm never going to find a job. No, you don't want to do that. You can't take it personally. It just wasn't the right fit for them. And, it'd be great for you to be in the position of saying, this is not the right fit for me. So you can't, you've got to be resilient is what I'm trying to say. So that's what I want to cover about passive and active job search. Okay, so let's get to networking, because this is something that I'm very passionate about, and that's when was one of the reasons that we planned a whole session on just networking. And I don't have the dates of that yet, but I think that's still being planned when that is. But I would encourage you, and if you walk away with nothing else today, okay, I know I'm like sharing a lot of information with, and I don't see the chat, but hopefully your colleagues are as well sharing information. The importance of networking. It is critical that you develop a network. And I don't mean just one when you're in job search. If you don't have a network now, I would suggest that you start developing a network now and that you make it part of your own professional development, whether you are in job transition, whether you are looking for a new opportunity, wherever you are, I would encourage you to have a strong network. People that are doing the kinds of things that you want to be doing, like-minded people. It's not just about who you know, but it's about who knows you. That's why I mentioned earlier, it's not just about getting 500 people to join you on LinkedIn. It's getting to know those people, finding out what their pain points are. Maybe you can help them, or maybe in your network, you can suggest someone that they talk to. It's about building those relationships. And like I said earlier, if you haven't done it yet, start it. If you walk away with nothing else, start it. And again, you're in an ideal situation because you have folks that are looking to do similar things in terms of developing their network too. And it's got to come from a place of authenticity. You've got to be yourself. People are able to read through if you're or see through, if you're not being authentic, and you've got to come at it from a place of, this is who I am, and I'm looking to get information from you. I'm not necessarily coming to you for a job right now because, I don't have that clarity yet, but I want to get some information from you. So be authentic, know what you have to offer. If you're not clear on that yet, it's okay. You'll get more clarity as you speak to people, but doing it in isolation is not going to help you. So know what you have to offer. Develop a 30-second elevator pitch, and again, emphasizing what it is that you have to offer, and talk about your skills, talk about your competencies, and what your skills are. And when you are developing your network, try to avoid those closed-ended questions. In particular, one around well, a closed-ended question, is like a yes/no question, right? You want to be able to ask open-ended questions to get more clarity, to get more information. It's not just about saying to someone, "Do you know someone who might be good for me to talk to?" No, that's a closed-ended question. The response is going to be yes or no. You ask it as an open-ended question. Who do you know? Sorry, my English is off. Who do you know who might be good for me to talk to, right? Not, do you know someone? No. So ask the open-ended questions and avoid the closed-ended question. Use your active listening skills. Don't be, so caught up in, what question should I ask now? No, you have your questions written down in advance, right? And you use your active listening skills. That's why we have 2 ears. So use your active listening skills to hear what they have to say. You never know what they're going to say, kind of read between the lines. So use your active listening skills. And when we do start, and we will eventually start meeting again, and if you're not comfortable going to a meeting or conference on your own, then invite someone to go with you. And you do this tag team kind of thing where you're in an event and you say, okay, so we're together here, and the two of us, and let's go meet 2 more people, and in a half hour, we're going to come back and report into each other, right? So, again, you have that accountability partner. You have someone else that is in a similar situation that you might be in. And if you're not comfortable going to large events, then I would suggest you don't do it, but you start off in a smaller event, right? Maybe it's again, getting on a committee where when you do go to a larger event, you already know people, especially if you tend to be more of a Myers-Briggs type introvert, right? For the extroverts, they are out there and they love to go to all the events, and they're meeting more people and they're moving from one group to another, and they're like moving and grooving, right? That's challenging for an introvert. And by the way, neither way is right or wrong. Let's make that clear. Neither way is right or wrong. But what I'm saying is, if you tend to be more of an introvert, then don't go to a large event for your first meeting. Go to a smaller event and get involved. And that way, when you do go to a large event, you already know people. Don't come across as pushy. People can read through that. If you say, I'm not coming to you for a job, and then you ask them for a job, no, not a good idea. So don't be pushy, and again, show up authentically, talk to as many people as you possibly can, join organizations, build those relationships with people, and determine how you can help them solve their challenges too. So that's some quick networking tips. I want to give you some quick tips on social media presence. And what I mean by this is LinkedIn and other forms of connecting with people via social media. Create a professional profile that has a professional picture of you on it, right? That has the pertinent details, that talks about your competencies, talks about what you are passionate about. Oftentimes I see people take the information from their resume or their Vita and they just move it right over to LinkedIn. No, again, this goes back to marketing. LinkedIn and these other social media platforms are another way for you to market yourself in a different way. On LinkedIn and everything, and these other places, you can have, what your presentations are, your research that you've done. You can talk about it in terms of what your successes are, more so than you can on your resume. I've had some people that will create their profile on LinkedIn that it talks about their situations that they were in, the actions that they took, and then what the results are. Because face it, people want to see results today. And this gets into not only developing your LinkedIn profile, but also when it comes to interviewing, you want to be able to talk about what your results are. That's going to differentiate you. So you want to be sure that you are able to do that. So people typically will hire based on past performance. Past performance is an indicator for future performance. So you want to be able to articulate the situation that you were in, the action that you took, and what the results are. So creating a profile with a professional picture, being succinct in your accomplishments. Don't forget about including your efforts as a volunteer. It's to have a well-rounded profile. Make your meaningful connections. Tell your story on your LinkedIn profile. Tell your audience why this is a profession that you are pursuing and you're passionate about it. Don't forget, many skills can be taught. No one can teach you about how to be passionate about what it is that you're doing. So people often hire, especially with early career candidates, they look for what you're passionate about. Excuse me, what you're passionate about. So be able to tell your story. Post regularly. This is not about just a one-time hit. Post regularly, whether it be, some of my folks will set up blogs, they'll set up other means of communicating with people to share their knowledge. You never know who's going to be sharing that information with someone else and what might be meaningful for them. Ask colleagues for recommendations, and always know what are the trends in your profession and available positions. This is also important when it comes to all these social media sites folks are on, is to follow influencers. So following people that are doing the kinds of things that you want to be doing, following influences in your field, and join the LinkedIn groups that they are in. Those are the influences that, again, this is where I mentioned early on about having a mentor, a sponsor. This is where those people can help you because they are already involved in your profession. So look to them to guide you through what group should you be in. Okay, so in the few minutes left we have, I'm going to talk about interviewing. And again, we have a separate session on this later on. I think it's either November, December, I can't remember right now. But obviously you prepare yourself, you practice. I don't have folks that I work with memorize their stories. It can't come from here. It's got to come from your gut. That's where you're going to show up authentically. Don't necessarily memorize. Now you might have some bullets for yourself of what you want to talk about, but don't memorize. People can read through that, especially, hiring managers can read through that, right? This is where I'm saying about being authentic. So prepare yourself, practice, accept the fact, you know what, everybody gets nervous and it's okay. So maybe you have to meditate beforehand or practice some self-compassion or some mindfulness before you go into an interview, whatever you need to do. But it's okay to be nervous. It's understood. Know what your value is when you are going into the interview. I also encourage folks to come at it from a place of, you know what, I'm interviewing them too. This is not just about them finding the right candidate, but it's about me finding the right opportunity. And it balances it out, right, mentally for ourselves. And I'm finding that more and more people, because they do want to be in a career that they are passionate about, if they are really looking at the right fit for them. And it's not just about what the right fit is for the employer. So in a good interview, you answer the questions and you don't make any mistakes and they like you. Okay, that's sort of a good interview. Whereas in a great interview, you engage them in a professional and intelligent conversation about your ability to excel in the position that they are looking for and that they want you. That's the difference between good and great. A great one is when you engage them in professional and intelligent conversation about your ability, your competencies to excel in the position. You also, again, I mentioned about situation, action, results. This is behavioral interviewing. You want to be able to talk about your successes and not just say, oh, yeah, I can do that. No, you want to be able to talk about not only that you have done it in the past, but what the success of you doing that, what differentiated you from your competition. And keep in mind that it's not up to the interviewer necessarily to determine if you are the best candidate. It's your responsibility to prove it to them. And that's where knowing your skills, knowing what you're passionate about, knowing your values, that's what's going to help you to be even more successful in your interview. But when it does come to interview, make sure that you have your situation, action, results, that you know your stories. Some people call it challenge, action, result. Some people call it STAR. There's all kinds of acronyms for it, but whatever works for you. So again, I'm not going to go into much detail about the interviewing because you're going to have a whole other session on interviewing. But keep in mind when it does come to interviewing, situation, action, results, be prepared to talk about yourself, to be able to tell them about why you're in the profession that you're in. Maybe be prepared to talk about the best job and the best boss and the worst boss you've ever had. They obviously want to know about your educational background. Oftentimes I'm going to be very upfront with you, and some of my best personal and professional friends are hiring managers and HR people. They don't always take the time beforehand to read your resume. So don't assume that they've read your resume. You have to be able to articulate your resume and your story. So be prepared for behavioral questions. Wow, we're at let's see, on the East Coast, we're at 4:40. So not bad, Brittany, huh? I think we did it, right? So if there are questions, I'll be happy to attempt to address them. And again, I want to thank you for participating today, and I wish you before we wrap up, I just wanted to be sure I mentioned that I wish you much luck in your success. Some of my colleagues will be doing the other presentations. I'm not sure, Brittany, I think a slide was prepared. I'm not sure, but I guess you'll share that at the end. So I'll leave that part up to you, but questions or comments people might have.
Yeah, so there is a question in the chat. The question is, how early before you start looking for a job should you start networking with the aim of looking for a job, and how early should you have conversations with potential employers before looking for a job?
Yesterday and yesterday. Yeah, absolutely. This, if you, I'm going to assume here, maybe you're a year out from finding a job, okay, or looking for a job. This is the time to be developing your network. This is the time to meet like-minded people. This is the time to get involved and start developing your profile. And I don't mean just profile on LinkedIn, but your portfolio. That's the word I'm thinking, portfolio. Now is the time to develop your portfolio so that in 6 months from now, when you do start looking for what your next success is going to be, you've already done a lot of that legwork. Oftentimes I see people waiting until the very last minute to start developing their network. And as Brittany alluded to earlier, it's more challenging now to develop that network. So it is going to take longer to develop that network. So I would suggest you do it right now, since yesterday is already passed, that you take the opportunity with this group today to start developing your network. And I know that in the fellows program, you'll be able to do that, which is great. Keep in mind, this is not the only group that you can be networking in. Find out where other people that are doing the kinds of things that you want to be doing are networking, and reach out to those groups as well. And then what was, did I answer both questions?
Yeah, yeah. So basically the second part was how early should you be talking to potential employers, like, hey, I'd be interested in working here, or, those kind of conversations.
Yeah. Do it now.
Yeah. I had one last kind of sort of specific question, but I know in academics anyways, a lot of jobs are posted, kind of what you were alluding to, that a lot of jobs are posted where there's already a candidate in mind. Should you be trying to pick those out as a potential applicant and avoid them, or should you just kind of know that that's going to happen to you? I don't know. When you're looking for jobs, is there any way to avoid that, or should you just know it's part of the process? Yeah,
it's all part of the process. I can't say, for sure whether somebody's going to, seek out another opportunity, seek out another person, even though they might have somebody in mind or not. But again, this goes back to your network. I mean, somebody's going to be offered that job, right? And somebody is their number one candidate, perhaps because it was through a referral. You want to get on as many referral lists of people that are in those positions, that know people that are in hiring positions, as you possibly can. So I wouldn't focus too much on, oh, well, should I apply for this because I know so-and-so is already getting it? Okay, then maybe that's not where you spend your energy. And maybe you spend that time more on, okay, so who else could I be adding to my network that would help me to become the number one candidate, or at least to get my resume and my information to the top of the stack versus, somewhere in the middle or towards the bottom. Did I answer your question? Sometimes I get like, so
yeah. No, you answered my question. That was really helpful. All right. Well, I think that, let me see, that's it. And we are out of